Mind if I drop in? You might be wondering why I'm in this cave. Well, you see, I'm searching for Devonian fossils. Bones and fossils can tell us a lot about prehistoric environments. What's the Devonian, you ask? Well, it's a time period in ancient Earth's deep history. I'll explain in more detail, but let's get out of here before we're trapped in a cave-in. The Devonian period spanned roughly 420 million years ago, to 360 million years ago. As you can see, the tectonic setting of the Devonian period is quite different than how tectonic plates are arranged today. Here in the southern hemisphere, we see the supercontinent of Gondwana, which is made up of modern-day South America, Africa, Arabia, India, Australia, and even Antarctica. On the equator, we have Euramerica. My America? No, Euramerica, which is made up of North America and Europe crashing into each other, forming what are now the Appalachian and Baltic Mountains. Now, where else have we seen two continental plates colliding to build massive mountains? That's right! The Himalayas! The tallest mountain range in the world, but not the tallest mountain range in history. It's suspected that the Euramerican continental mountain range was actually taller than the Himalayas are now. But you might wonder, why don't they still exist? Erosion. Rocks erode over time. So after 400 million years, there's not much left of these giant mountains. But all of that rock has to go somewhere. Nutrients trapped in the rock are able to fertilize the oceans, and sediments accumulate in low-lying areas, creating deposits that can collect fossils. The climate in the Devonian wasn't actually quite as extreme as some of the other climates in certain time periods in Earth's deep history. The Cretaceous was known as the hothouse because it was so warm compared to all the other time periods. And the Pleistocene was characterized by ice ages. The Devonian follows the Silurian period, which acted as a recovery period after the first mass extinction in deep history at the end of the Ordovician. The mass extinction at the end of the Ordovician was actually an ice age, while the Devonian is pretty warm to be able to sustain lots of life in the shallow oceans that characterized early Earth. Speaking of life on the Devonian is pretty aptly named the Age of Fish. Marine life was where it was at in the Devonian period. The seas were brimming with conodonts, placoderms, dinichthyes, agnathans, ostracoderms, heterostracons, chondrichthyans, lungfish, coelacanths, and rhipidicians. Some of those are the same thing. Nevertheless, one of them, conodonts, are of especial importance. Conodonts were actually tiny in size, however, they were immensely diverse and prolific. Their teeth react specific ways under different pressure and temperature after fossilizing, which makes them incredibly useful in finding rock layers that have potential to contain oil or other fossil fuels. The other cool thing about fish in the Devonian period is that there were the first instances of sharks. Cladocoelach was the first shark that ever existed, and it was the part of the class Chondrichthyes, which are cartilaginous fish. They were also called Muppet sharks. And in honor of them, check out this 3D model shark I made! It's not what they looked like, but just look at him. His name is Bob. Anyway, fish weren't just swimming around during the Devonian. There's also evidence of the first lobe-finned fishes, which are the ancestors of all terrestrial tetrapods. But fish weren't the only players on the field. Invertebrates still played a pivotal role in most Devonian ecosystems, just like they do today. Bivalves, brachiopods, corals, crinoids, trilobites, eurypterids, gastropods, cephalopods, ostracods, as well as foraminifera, radiolaria, and sponges. But enough about the sea. What's going on land? Remember when I mentioned Rhipidistia, aka lobe-finned fishes, and how they were the ancestors of all terrestrial tetrapods? Well, in the Devonian is when we finally get animals on land, besides bugs. There are two things that mainly support this theory. The first of which is the Zakelmi trackways in the Holy Cross Mountains of Poland. There are trace fossil footprints from the Middle Devonian, which were made by a mysterious semi-terrestrial lobe-finned fish that we actually don't have any fossils of. The other strong proponent of the evolution of terrestrial life in the Devonian is Tiktaalik. Tiktaalik is a tetrapodial lobe-finned fish that possessed many traits that suggest it spent time outside of water. It had wrists that allowed it to push itself up off the ground. It had a flattened body to stay balanced without the buoyancy of water. And it had eyes on the top of its head to see out of water while staying submerged, showing Tiktaalik is still semi-aquatic but still concerned about what's going on outside the water. But what was so interesting on land that it drove Tiktaalik and the Zakelmi trackmaker to expand their domain out of the water? You guessed it, plants! Looking at a flourishing Devonian landscape, it looks more like a radioactive wasteland as opposed to the lush green plant life we expect from modern ecosystems. By the beginning of the Devonian, plants had already evolved most of the attributes that would make them pretty identifiable as similar to modern plants. They had roots, leaves, and produced seeds, and they were likely related to modern-day lycopods. By the end of the Devonian, more modern plants had evolved, including plants like ferns, horsetails, and progymnosperms, which were the first real trees with proper woody tissues. Well, there you have it, the Devonian period. A time full of innovations around the globe. The first sharks, the first terrestrial invertebrates, and the first trees. The Devonian is arguably the coolest time period in Earth's deep history. Well, besides the Cretaceous, of course.